Hey folks, welcome to Board Game Blender, episode 12. Today we are talking about conflict resolution, we are talking about victory points, we are talking about how games end, we are talking tiebreakers. I'm calling this one In It to Win It. And you're going to see a plethora of discussions really on many varied subjects. And you're even going to see an interview with my favorite designer, Bruno Cathala, at Gen Con. That's going to be one of our segments today. Speaking of Gen Con, we just came back from Gen Con, and it was a spectacular show. Approximately 61,000 gamers were there, so amazing crowd. Lots of new releases, about 70 or 80 new releases. I'm counting, new games and expansions. And just a lot going on. So make sure you check out our Blender's Best of the Month, which is another show that we are doing once a month with our contributors letting you know what was the best game we played that month and why we liked it so much. We've done one of these, so go back and check that one out if you haven't seen it. But I guarantee you the next one coming out at the end of the month is going to be a pretty spectacular one with all these new games hitting the market, all right? So, one more bit of business here I want to take care of before I let you check out the show. The Dice Tower is doing a contest where you can win some credit for CoolStuffInc.com. And it's very, very simple to enter. If you want to enter for Board Game Blender, you need to send me an email at gmail.com. I'm sorry, Zdicetower, Z-E-E Dice Tower at gmail.com. I'm going to put it on the screen for you anyway. And very simple, send me an email there, and you need to tell me what is the favorite segment you've seen on the blend. And, it doesn't have to be one specific show, just the favorite segment you've seen. I will not be sharing that with my contributors, so guys, don't even ask. That's just for me, for my own interests. I like data, so I want to check out what you guys say, all right? So very simple, email me there. You have until the end of the month here, end of August, and then you'll be entered to win. What do you win? Very simple. If you are picked, and I will randomly pick one of the entries, you are going to get $50 to spend at CoolStuffInc.com. And of all the winners from every channel that is participating in this, in the Dice Tower, so, the podcast and many of our other podcasts in the network, one of those winners is going to be a grand winner, and they are going to get $500. So, you could win 50, or you can, if you're one of those winners, you could even win 500. So, enter. And, send me an email, like I said, and you'll be in that pool, and just pull one out randomly, and you could walk away with some walking around money, some game money, all right? So, that's it. Let's check out our show, folks. Thanks again for tuning in it to win it. Here we go.
Hi, and welcome to the Bargain Bin. Ben here, alongside me is Kirsten.
Hey.
And today we're going to be in it to win it. We're talking about tiebreakers. And to do that, we're going to feature a game called Red 7. Kirsten, why don't you tell us a little bit about the game?
Red 7 was published in 2014 by Asmodee Games. It can play 2 to 4 players and has an MSRP value of $12, but you should be able to find it for about $10. Red 7 is a hand management game where players only have a certain amount of cards in their hand that they can play each turn. At the end of their turn, if a player is not beating all of the other players in the game, then they are out. At the end of the game, the last player standing wins the round. A lot of games have a tie-breaking mechanism for if 2 players were to tie at the end of the game. It would tell who was the winner of the game. But one really cool thing about Red 7 is that it uses the tie-breaking mechanism throughout the entire game. Benny, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So in Red 7, the objective is going to be constantly changing depending on what cards have been played to the canvas. And so in this we have most even cards. And so we have players 1, 2, and 3, and they each have 2 even cards. This is where the tiebreakers start coming into play. Let's say it's players 1's turn. we see that they have 2 evens, just like the other 2 players, except they have 2 4s. The first tiebreaker is going to be the card that qualifies for the objective with the highest numerical value. So right now he's not winning because this player has a 6, and so does this player. So then next, let's say it goes to player 2. This player is out, and so their cards no longer count because they couldn't win the objective and they didn't have another card to play. So the next player is going to try to stick with this same objective. Well, we have a 6 and a 4 here and a 6 and a 4 here. So that's when it goes to the next tiebreaker. And this one's kind of fun and unique to the game. It goes by color. And so if you remember elementary school, we have Roy G. Biv. And so that's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And so the color is going to determine the next tiebreaker. So for example, we have the 6 here and a 6 here. Well, violet is the lowest, where red is the highest. So now this player is winning the current objective because of this tiebreaker. So the first thing you're going to have is numerical value. And then after that, it's going to be color. And so that's kind of how the tiebreakers work in Red 7. And so that's how the game is really interesting with that mechanism in place, because you have to be thinking about when should I play my higher cards, the cards that are kind of be my trump cards for the tiebreaker. Because also, not only are they your cards that are going to be to complete your objective or to, be the tiebreaker, but they're also your cards for objectives. So maybe it would be more beneficial to play that later, but you kind of have to balance it because you want a good tiebreaker out there, or other people are going to easily be able to beat your, in this scenario we had all the evens. So you really have to balance when to play those cards. And I like to get a high number out there early because I like to have a good tiebreaker because I think it makes it more difficult for the other players to win. And so each turn I'm always thinking about what card should I play so that I have the advantage in case somebody tries to match the objective that I'm going for. And so I think that's how the tiebreakers really add a nice layer to the game that enhances the strategy and just makes it a little more fun to think of when is the right time to play each card. So I think the tiebreakers in this game aren't just for a win condition or something like that. They're really part of the gameplay. And so that's Red 7. Again, it's by Asmati Games. You're going to be able to find it for about $10. And I've had a lot of fun with it. I take it to work with me and we play sometimes during lunch. And it's just gone over really well with a lot of different groups. So if you can get your hands on it, it should be easy to find. I would definitely suggest it. And thanks for tuning in to this week's Bargain Bin. And we hope to see you on the Blender again. Have a good day.
Hi there, I'm John from John Gets Games, and my new segment is called Pro Neutral Con. In this, I will take some aspect of the overall Board Game Blender theme and look at it through these 3 different perspectives and really see how it works. Today, I'd like to talk about victory points. These are the main way that most games end. You go through the whole game and then you add up all these different numbers and see who has the most or least of this value, and they get to win the game. And so let's take a look at why. The pro for victory points really is that from a designer's perspective, they can evaluate anything they want to. They can incentivize and disincentivize all sorts of actions and guide each player's experience through that way. You can have situations where you could do a very powerful action, but it might cost you victory points. You go down, but you're investing, you're hoping that it pays off and you get a whole bunch of victory points out of it later on in the game. Versus you could have situations where you just get a bunch of victory points for doing something, but it's going to hurt you. It's going to slow down your engine. It might be a card that just is really clunky in your deck and you get to it and it does nothing, but at the end of the game it's going to get you those points that you need. Or you might have things where it just costs you lots and lots of resources and you need to decide, am I at a place in this game where I want to start cashing out, maybe rip my engine apart a little bit to get these victory points out of it. These great decisions that victory points allow players to go through really buffer why so many board games use victory points as a tool. So now let's talk about the neutral aspect to victory points. That really is the point salad syndrome that has started to emerge, and it is this idea where you get victory points for doing all sorts of things. You move your pawn once on the board, you get a victory point. You draw a card from the stack, you get 2 victory points. You take a look to the player on your right, and you get 5 victory points. You just get points for doing every single thing in this game, and you just add those up together. I think it's called point salad because it's kind of like throwing tomatoes and carrots and lettuce and onions, and you just mix it all up and you're like, haha, I have 275 points, and you see if you have the most. And I know that some people really enjoy that. I actually quite like that a lot in games because I just like everything being evaluated, but a lot of people don't. They would rather get to the point where they are spinning all these gears and getting the engine going, and then at the very end they cash out and get a bunch of points for whatever it is they did, and if they didn't quite make it there, well then they just don't get anything. So ultimately, it's a thing to keep in mind with victory points. There is a huge spread for how much they can be used, and your taste is going to really guide where you're going to fall in that spectrum. And now for the con towards victory points. And this has to do with the thematic disconnect that most games have with them. You might be diving down into the ocean to get the most treasure, or summoning massive armies and clashing against each other, or building a trade empire and selling your spices and your cloth. But ultimately, the game is over, you add all these numbers together, you sum them up, and you say, I have 67 somethings, and you have 54 somethings, therefore, I'm the winner, you are not. I'm the best merchant, or rock climber, deep sea adventurer, sorcerer, whatever it is, just because this number says so. And ultimately, I think it's a thing that we've all collectively gotten over, because victory points are such a great way to add that value to the games that it's a necessary thematic break that we can all abide by because we just love the way it incentivizes all these turn structures. And you know what? It might be called glory or money or prestige, but at the end of the day, it is just an abstract number that lets you decide who did the game better. And that about wraps it up. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments regarding my take towards victory points. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, today I'm talking about tiebreakers. A lot of times they feel like they're just kind of tacked on to the end of a rulebook, which is interesting considering that they can literally determine the winner of the game. And after a hard-played board game, it can feel frustrating to end in a tie. Actually, it's interesting how you feel about tying can change whether you thought you were winning or whether you thought you were losing before the end. So what makes a good tiebreaker and what makes a bad one? In doing my research, I found a lot of tiebreakers that fall into this category of funny and thematic, but ultimately useless. In Arboretum, tied players are told to go outside and plant a tree, and whoever has the tallest tree in 5 years wins. That takes patience as a virtue to the extreme. In Super Motherlode, besides the name being spelled wrong, the player who last dug a hole starts the game, and in the case of a tie, the player who lied about digging a hole loses. Let's face it, chances are everyone lied about digging that hole. And in Pirate's Cove, the tiebreaker is an epic and very pirate-like battle to the death. Thematic, but I'd probably get tired of killing all my gaming group. While these may be good for a momentary laugh, ultimately they feel pretty unsatisfying. I have 3 criteria for a good tie-breaking system. Does it relate to the theme? Does it relate to the gameplay? And are there enough of them? In Alien Frontiers, the tie goes to the person with the most alien tech cards. The problem is, for such a tightly scored game, it feels like a toss-up on who might have the most tech cards at the end, making this feel arbitrary. In Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the tie goes to the player with the greatest square footage. This feels true to the game's theme and mechanics, but it's a pain in the neck to do all that math at the end of the game. But there are definitely games that do tie-breaking well. In Kemet, the first person to cross a point threshold wins, but in the case of a tie, there are 3 levels of tie-breaking, each of which makes sense in context to the game's mechanisms. If you win by tiebreaker here, you definitely feel like you earned the W. Evolution is a good example of a game that goes more than one tiebreaker deep, but also infuses some humor into the situation. And come on, pizza! And the granddaddy of them all is, perhaps unsurprisingly, nothing personal. Most games offer one tiebreaker, but not a second level on the assumption that one would be enough. And sure, maybe most of the time it is. But if you've gone to all the trouble of playtesting and developing your game, why not go the extra step of adding one more logical tiebreaker? Of course, our very own Mr. Vassal has feelings about this topic, so is it any wonder that Nothing Personal has 7 levels of tiebreaking? By the time you get to the funny final tiebreaker, you might actually be tempted to be the first to the roof to toss that game. And then there are the games that just tell you to play more of it if you end in a tie. Of course, if you really hate ties, you can always play a game that can't end in one. Alright, so what are some of your favorite tiebreakers? I'd love to read some of the quirkier ones that you've seen. See you next time.
Hey friends of the Blend, welcome to another episode of Board Game Blender. Conflict in games is used for all sorts of things, whether determining who wins the entire game down to just who gets that extra piece of gold at the end of the round. For me, the way that conflict is used most effectively and most enjoyably is when it adds to the story, when it doesn't just happen because of the story or as a part of it, but it actually adds to the narrative itself. Mansions of Madness is designed by Corey Koniska and is published by Fantasy Flight Games. And it's pretty clear that the system the game is built around was designed with storytelling and theme in mind. Now the game is for 2 to 5 players, with one player playing the keeper who controls the monsters and reads off the events that occur and that sort of thing. And the rest of the players playing investigators in the 1920s trying to unravel some sort of Lovecraftian mystery. Each scenario starts with a backstory, explaining why investigators have come to this ominous place. As players explore the board, they may uncover nothing at all, which is always very fun, or they may uncover special items that'll help in their quest. And more importantly, they may uncover clues that will unlock other portions of the board. Mythos cards are played from the keeper's hand at various points in the game directly on investigators and generally require the investigator to pass some sort of test. For instance, this one, called Vertigo, requires the investigator to be in a room with the foyer, stairs, or a space with a ladder. So this investigator down here with this ladder could play that. And you can see they have to take a willpower test, and if they fail, they take 1 damage. Since the Mythos cards are situationally dependent, keeper or the investigator has to be in the basement, or has to be on a stairway, or has to be in a graveyard with a monster, or whatever it is. The flavor text always makes perfect sense to whatever's going on in that particular situation. Conflict can also be found simply by exploring a room. Maybe you have a power failure. The lights in this room refuse to turn on. Either rewire the primitive electrical system in this room or stumble around in the dark. But my absolute favorite way this game interjects theme into the gameplay and story of this game is through combat. Let's say Michael McGlynn is going to be fighting this axe-wielding maniac right here. Well, what do you do? You go down to this deck, the keeper draws a card. Right off the top here, we got ranged weapon, and that's what Michael's using, his Tommy gun over there. So you can see you got a little story that goes along with the combat. You catch the monster in your sights, test marksmanship. He tests his marksmanship ability. If he passes, you got some more story. The shot punctures its lung, deal weapon damage +2. Or if you fail, your shot grazes its shoulder, alerting it of your presence. Deal 1 damage. If you've never had the opportunity to play Mansions of Madness, I highly recommend you at least play it one time, just to get a feel for the rich narrative that every part of this game brings to the table. Hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.
Hey folks, for today's Quirky Game, I want to talk about a little game in which you don't have a winner. Instead, you have a single loser, which is a very interesting concept. There's not a lot of games that do it. In this game, everyone wins and just one person loses. So, the game is called Pairs. I have here the pirate-themed deck, but they made many, many different ones. They made one based on fruits, which was the original one, Pairs. Play on words, of course, with the fruit and the fact that you have to avoid pairs of cards in this game. And the game is really very, very simple. It's a push your luck game. The game comes with a deck of cards in which the deck is a pyramid. That means there is 1 1, 2 2s, 6 6s, 10 10s. And you are quite simply giving everyone a card, and when their turn is up, you tell them if they want another card or not. So once I have a 6 in front of me, as you can see here, I could say, okay, fine, hit me. And I will draw randomly here. I got a 7. I'm still good because I did not pair up. And then it would be the next person's turn. My other option on my turn is if I already have a bunch of cards which are dangerous to me. Let's say I have a 6, a 7, and a 9. I could, instead of saying, all right, give me a card, hit me, I could say, I'm not going to ask for a card. Instead, I'm going to take any one card on the table and bank it. Banking cards is bad. Once you cross a specific threshold of the total of the cards you've banked, you lose and everybody else wins. And so you have to make that choice very carefully. Now, if there's a 1 out there on the table and this is everything I have, I probably will just say, okay, I'll take the 1. And then we clear the table of all of these cards and everybody gets 1 new card, we do it again. But sometimes the card you would take is significant. It's a 5, a 6. So do you take the risk? Do you just ask for a card and hope you don't get another one that you already have? Because if that happens, let's say someone flips a card and I get another 7, well, then I have to bank one of those 7s. And that's pretty bad. So that's it. That's basically the whole game. You keep going until a threshold is crossed, depending on the number of players. Depends, it indicates that threshold. And you get that one loser. Everybody else points and laughs. And you probably play again because the game is so very quick. This is an interesting one, but it's very quirky. I like the idea of everybody winning, just one person being out. And you could even use that to great effect. So the game is here advertised on the box as a new classic pub game, and you could have this game be the one that decides who pays for dinner tonight, who's paying for the cab ride home, that sort of thing. And that's cool. You could do a single loser, right? Which is interesting and has its applications, I guess, in real life. So I recommend it. I think it's neat. If you're looking for a pocket filler that plays a nice group of people, I recommend you look into Pairs here. Pretty neat stuff. Lots of different themes to pick from with the decks that they produced. Pairs. Check this one out. Quirky.
Hello folks, welcome to Corner Chat. I'm here with Bruno Cathala. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
All right, good.
In French, you say Cathala.
Oh, Cathala, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, you may know him from games like Five Tribes, Abyss, and many other excellent titles.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, I love Gen Con.
Yes, it's great, isn't it? We are Gen Con 2015. So, today we're talking about it, in it to win it. We're talking about in conditions in games.
Okay.
Okay? So, when you're designing with multiple in conditions in mind, what are some of the challenges and strategies that you face when doing that?
In fact, I just like to introduce, when it's possible, multiple ways to win.
Yeah.
Just because it gives some richness to the game, a high replayability value, and you can't focus on only one condition.
Right.
I don't like when the game is linear. When you play it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and okay, there is a learning curve, but you have no surprises into the game. So I like to make the people focus on different things and try to adapt their strategy, which what is going on with the other players. And I prefer to work on the adaptation value of each player than only on the learning curve. You see?
Yep, that's great. So when you're designing for that type of thing and you're trying to decide on game length, are there pitfalls that you run into with that when there are multiple conditions?
The length of the game depends on the game system, you know.
Yes.
And it depends also to the number of players. Depending on the deepness of the game, I will accept to have longest games. You know,
right?
And the more random you have into the games, the more short it has to be, because players accept a chaos effect, a random aspect into the game, if the length it's not too long. You see, if you make a game which for 1 hour, for example, or 2 hours, you have to avoid random factors because people can't accept, and I, as a player, I can't accept to lose on a roll dice just after 2 hours of thinking.
That's great. All right, so are there in-game triggers that you run into where people tend to exploit more than others to end the game quicker?
Yeah.
So what do you do to combat that?
I don't know anything to combat that because it's very often it's one of the strategies I like to do myself.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
Yeah, I
so,
agree.
You have to check that there is no way to break the game too shortly. But I like when there is a possibility to introduce a blitz into the game.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be faster than your opponent. And I like it has. You have to be able to win that way, but not each time.
Right. Awesome. All right, so how's your Gen Con been? Tell us about some of your latest titles.
Gen Con is really good. Yeah. So during that con, I had 3 new games released there. First one is the expansion of 5 Tribes.
5 Tribes.
Which works so well.
Yeah.
It's just an expansion, and I couldn't expect to sell so many games in a short time.
Right.
We came here with more than 300 copies, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And it was sold out the first day.
Yeah.
So I hope that people will not be too much disappointed not to find it immediately there. So,
but it'll be everywhere soon.
Yeah, exactly. And I had 2 other releases, which were quite old games. Which have been reprinted, but with some changes inside. First one is Mission Red Planet, which has been released by FFG now.
Yep.
And it also worked well because they had 500 copies sold in 2 days.
Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you, guys. And the other game is Queen Necklace, which was an old Days of Wonder game.
Okay.
And now it's republished by Cool Mini or Not. And
awesome.
I'm really happy with the artwork. They did a good job. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And folks, thanks for joining us as well. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Howdy gamers, welcome to another episode of Buy, Try, or Deny. I'm Indiana John. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 games that fit today's episode topic, which is In It to Win It. Which is a topic about the ends of games and how we win things. So I thought it might be interesting to take a look at 3 games that either end too quickly or don't end quickly enough. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Today's buy game should be familiar to many of you gamers because it is currently the #1 game on BoardGameGeek.com, and that is Twilight Struggle, designed by Ananda Gupta and Jason Matthews and published by GMT Games. Twilight Struggle is a 2-player strategy game that plays out the events of the Cold War from 1945 to 1989, the struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. In this game, you are attempting to get to 20 victory points by placing influence onto the board in certain countries and then scoring at opportune times to be able to give you points for control and influence of those regions. The interesting thing about the scoring track is that it's sort of a push-pull tug-of-war mechanic where in order to get points, you have to sort of take them away from somebody else, and only one player ever has an actual positive score at any time. Now, the way that this game ends too quickly sometimes is that the scoring is determined by the scoring cards that are in each player's hand, and they can choose to play them at exactly the right moment. So if particular players have built up influence in particular nations and they play that scoring card at just the right time, they may be able to actually claim victory with just one scoring card. It doesn't happen very often, but it is a game that can possibly end too quickly if you don't know about how the game is played. Usually, though, the game plays about between 1.5 to 3 hours, and it's a really great game. It's definitely worthy of being in the upper echelon of games on Board Game Geek. I'd highly recommend this one, Twilight Struggle. If you like games where you have to race to victory, why not give a try to Roll for the Galaxy, designed by Wei Hua Huang and Tom Lehman, published by Rio Grande Games. This is the dice version of Tom Lehman's card game Race for the Galaxy, where you are using, in this case, dice to select actions so that you can explore space, build settlements, settle planets, build developments, and create a tableau of tiles in front of you that are going to give you victory points. You can also get victory points during the course of the game by shipping goods, but the game is going to end when one player has 12 of these tiles built in front of them. And you actually start off with 3, so you need to build 9. This game does not have a whole lot of player interaction to it, so you might find that you are focused on what you're doing and someone else might be getting to that victory condition or the end game condition of 12 tiles and kind of take you by surprise. That's happened to me in a lot of games of this, and that's why it's not a buy for me, but definitely a try. I love the game, but I have had a couple of frustrating experiences where I'm ready to build a really big combo and gain a lot of points and do a lot of cool things, and then I find that the game is over. So that might not be for everybody, but I think this is a great implementation of the Race for the Galaxy system. I like it even better than the card game, and I think it's a definite winner. So if this sounds interesting to you, I would definitely recommend giving a try to Roll for the Galaxy. So we've now arrived at today's Deny game, which is actually a series of games. And it's a series of games that is loved by many and reviled by many others. And of course I am talking about Flux. Now I actually happen to own 3 versions of Flux. I have Zombie Flux, Pirate Flux, and every young person's favorite, Stoner Flux. And all of these games play out in about the same way. The rule set is very simple. You don't actually start the game knowing how to win the game, and you're looking for cards that are going to fit a win condition that's changing all the time. The game is totally in flux. It's great for a fun little party game, and if it lasts for 10 minutes, then that's great, but this can sometimes last for 45 minutes to an hour. The box even says 10 to 40 minutes, and if it lasts 10 minutes, that's great. And if it lasts 40 minutes, you want to kill yourself. So that is my Deny game, unfortunately. It has its place in the gamer community. I can't fault Andy Looney and the Looney Labs folks for making a million different versions of it, because it can be a light, fun game. But in general, it's a Deny for me. So to recap, for games that end too quickly or not quickly enough, our Deny game or games are Flux, Flux, and Flux. Don't let those go on for too long. Our try game is Roll for the Galaxy, a wonderful implementation of Race for the Galaxy, but watch out for your opponents to make sure that they're not racing to victory too quickly. And our buy game, Twilight Struggle, a fantastic game, but if you're not well versed in how the scoring cards work, could end a little bit too quickly. So that's Buy, Try, or Deny for this episode, and until next time, game on.
Hey folks, for today's Under the Radar, I want to highlight a game recently reprinted by Z-Man Games out a few years ago called Sky Tango in its English name. And this is a game I've not seen a lot of people playing. I think it's flying under the radar. And there's one interesting thing in it I want to highlight specifically, and that is the ability to play with partners. I really love when a game plays with 2, plays with 3 in a normal way, but then when you hit 4 players, the game says, okay, with 4, you play in partnerships. Always interests me. Every time I read that in a rulebook, I'm like, ooh, that's unique, because it tends to change the game and not really rewrite the game, but it just gives you an interesting variability. Now, some games, when they say that playing partnership thing, it really just means, hey, this game only goes up to 3 and we wanted to play 4, so you two are basically going to represent just a table of 2 people. But this game does it in a really interesting way. The idea is you are creating with these cards lines in front of the players, and so you can have night cards that look like this, or you can have day cards, and the day cards are in orange and they look like this. They have numbers, as you can see, and the idea is you are creating these lines of cards in night and in day, and once you have a certain number of them face up in front of you, well, you can bank them at that point. The numbers denote where you can play, and so you always have to play higher than the highest or lower than the lowest you have in front of you. When you play with 2 players, play with 3 players, you are basically playing on your own. You can have a line of day cards, you can have a line of night cards in front of yourself. When you play with partners, however, 2-on-2, you're going to sit opposite your partner, of course, as in most games with partners, and one of you two can have night cards, and the other can have day cards. And you can play on your partner. You can play in front of them. In fact, in this game, you can play in front of anyone. And that's very interesting. I like that a lot because you have to be careful who starts the night line and who's got the day line. I think it's unique and interesting. You, in this game, have to play a card every time it's your turn, even if it's detrimental. And so you sometimes end up giving a card to one of your neighbors, which would be your opponents, that you don't really want to give them. But if you can coordinate with your partner, really just, there's no discussion or anything necessarily, but just sort of fall into a timing rhythm, into a groove, where the cards you have in your hand, you can just boom, 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 pass to them, play on their table and help them out, then it really becomes an interesting game of rhythm, of cadence, and it's very cool, very unique. So, Sky Tangle, I gotta recommend it, especially with the team play variant, 2-on-2. Check this one out. It seems like nobody's talking about it anymore. It came out some time ago, made a little bit of a bleep on the screen, and now it's gone. I don't see anybody playing it. I don't see anybody talking about it. But I think it's a worthwhile little filler. Really neat stuff. So check this one out. Do not let it fly under the radar. And I'll see you next time.
I bet we'll get out in 10 minutes.
Easy. We have lots of dice. Escape. The Curse of the Temple is a game obviously about escaping the cursed temple. You're rolling a bunch of dice, activating crystals, and trying to find the exit. At the first glance, it may seem easy, but you have a timer. You have exactly 10 minutes. So you have to roll your dice fast, and the luck is your best friend.
I only need 2 keys. Aww.
At times, you can get really unlucky, and all your dice will be locked. But it's a cooperative game, so your friends might help you out.
Help! Help! I'm stuck!
Jane, you're here. Let me help you. But the most tension in the game is in its ending. You want to roll those specific symbols, get out, find the exit. But if at least one of you will be stuck in the temple, everyone will lose. On the other hand, if everyone will get out of the temple, you will have those cheerful moments, high fives. Our gaming group got the most high fives out of this game. And we felt really exhausted and proud that we got out of the cursed temple.
Yay! We did it! High five!
Woo! Oh, wait, where's John? Where's the exit? Where? Oh no! No! Guys!
Hey everybody, today my designer spotlight is on one of the most prolific game designers in the industry, and his name is Dr. Rainer Knizia. He has done hundreds of games. You name it, he's done it. But I want to focus on 2 games that I really like because of his end game mechanic. And those 2 games are Tigris and Euphrates and Samurai. What he does in these 2 games is very interesting. Normally you want to score the most points to win. But in both of these games, you're collecting multiple different things, and you have your final score based on the one that you collected the least in. So if I collected, let's say, 5 reds, 5 blues, 5 greens, but only 3 yellows, my score would be 3. So he kind of takes this unique mechanic of you want to make sure that you're balancing what you're collecting during the game. He does that both in Tigris and Euphrates with the 4 different colors that you're collecting, and also in Samurai with the 3 different Japanese things that you're collecting. So I think that's a really unique way to end the game and use an end game scoring. And that's why if you're looking for a good game with really unique scoring, or a lot of games in general, look for something by Dr. Rainer Knizia, my designer spotlight of the week.
It's MAGGIBOT here for Board Game Blender, and today is about conflict resolution. So I have dredged up one of my favorite overlooked games from last year, which is Ortis Arena. This is a 2-player abstract game from Fablesmith Games. Now, Ortis Arena, it did come in a different, there were different versions of it. You could get beautiful custom pewter miniatures that they made for the game, but the price tag on those was a little bit high for me, and I'm happy with my kind of ugly, weird meeples with hats. So this is my version, but you definitely will see prettier versions out in the world. Now, the gameplay here is really smart. Your goals are either to kill enough of your opponent's pieces to get your guide into the center of the board, which is at least 9 pieces, or if you start your turn and you control 5 wells of power, that's also going to win the game for you. Those same wells decide how many resources you have each turn. So at the beginning of your turn, you check how many wells of power you're controlling, and that tells you how many energy you get to start with. So I'm controlling 3, I have 25 energy to start. The minimum you're going to start a turn with is 14, and the maximum is 28. Now, each move I make on the board, each hex I cross, and for every time I want to attack, costs that energy. The different types of attacks are either ranged, staying still and hitting someone across the board for kind of a minor amount of damage, or if I have a melee piece, I can run up to that player and punch him in the face, and it costs a lot more for them to defend. At any time on my turn, I may pass, and the leftover energy I have is used to defend my pieces when it's not my turn. So what that means is that on my turn, I have 25 power, and maybe I spend 10 of it running around trying to take over some walls of power, but then I want to keep enough power around to make sure that the pieces I really care about don't die and have to go back to the start. So it's an interesting balance. You really have to play to not letting your opponent in on whatever you're trying to do in the game, and it's very difficult because it's a small board and you have a pretty clear goal. It's very cool. Your guide also, every time you kill someone, the guide moves up toward the center, and one of your fallen warriors can get summoned wherever that guide is, so that is also a way of sneaking into a well and getting some extra energy. There are advanced rules which give each color represented here a different ability. That is a very interesting approach. The only problem with that approach is that they did not guard this for colorblind people. So if you were colorblind, you would have to add in some hatching or something to differentiate the different colors from each other. Otherwise, a fantastic first game from them, and I really hope they do something else very soon. That's all for me, and I'll see you guys next time.
I'm busy. I'm reading something for work. Yeah, I'll take out the trash later. Sounds to me like we have a conflict. You want to roll for it? I guess I didn't roll high. Hello, friends of the Blend, and welcome back to Retro Board Game Corner. Don't have a lot of time, so I'll just jump right on into it. Tower of the Wizard King, published in 1993 by Parker Brothers. This is a 2 to 4 player game with a unique twist on battling. Let me show you how it works. This is what the game board will look like set up. Every player will pick a color to play and then take the matching base to that color. After you've done that, you have to decide from the characters that are available who you're going to be to start. Right now, what we have is a dwarf, an ogre, a skeleton, and an orc. So you're just going to shuffle the cards, deal one to a player, and then that's who you are to start. But don't worry, you can change your character during the course of the game. Inside the tower, there is a dragon, a minotaur, a warrior, and an elf. Depending on which character you are, the card will tell you what to move. So for example, if you're the orc player, you move 5 spaces each turn. So here's the orc, and you just move adjacent spaces, and whatever you land on, you will pick up the disc and do whatever it says. Now, if you land on a castle that has no pennants on it, you just go ahead and take 1 pennant and you control that castle. If you landed on a castle that has pennants on it, you have to battle that color player. In this example, you are the green player. You landed on a place that has yellow pennants on it, so you have to fight the yellow player. The yellow player is a skeleton. So you will look on this card. You are the attacker. You will roll 2 dice against skeletons, which will roll 3 dice in defense. Your chances aren't that good. So if you want, before you roll the dice, you can choose to change your character to see if you can come up with a more powerful character to defeat that particular character. If you want to change your character, you have to do it before you roll the dice. So you'll move your character to the tower, put the character and the base in the tower, close the door, pull the handle, open the door, and you have transformed into another character. You now just take the character card, and all the special abilities of that character belong to you now. Whenever you use the tower to transform your character, you must move the Wizard King 1 space up the ladder. So in this example, green will be attacking the yellow player. Green is an orc, yellow is a skeleton, so you'll look on your card to see how many dice you'll roll. The orc will roll 2 dice, the skeleton will roll 3 dice. Highest die result will win the battle. When you successfully beat your opponent in battle, you will take off all his color pennants and replace them with your own color. The object of the game is to have the most pennants on castles throughout the board before the Wizard King reaches his tower. This game takes about an hour to an hour and a half to play, but let me tell you, every time I pull it out, everybody has a good time. They especially like the part where you can change your character right in the middle of the battle. That always makes for a lot of guessing and a lot of strategic play. Well, that's all the time I have for now. May your rolls be high.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin from Grizzly Games, and welcome back to another segment of Two Player Pals, where I show you board games from a two-player perspective. This week's theme of In It to Win It is all about winning. The end condition of games, how to win, best ways to win, and the different aspects of winning. So let me show you one of my favorite pick up and deliver games and how I can best help you how to win. What I want to show you today is Black Fleet, which is by Space Cowboys and is one of my favorite pick up and deliver games that I currently have, which also happens to have a pirate theme, which again I also really enjoy. Now in Black Fleet you'll be utilizing different Navy, merchant, and pirate ships to circumnavigate across the board to pick up and deliver different types of cargo and deliver them from one port to another to then gain doubloons. Now in Black Fleet, the doubloons themselves are these really nice looking metal coins which have some heft to them, so I really enjoyed that aesthetic aspect of the game itself. But the point of having the doubloons is for 2 reasons. One, you need them to win the game. You need to buy these different player power cards for yourself, which have different abilities on them that only you will have, that are vastly different than your opponent. And in doing so, you will have a sort of different feel to the game than what your opponent might have. So if you have larger sails, for instance, you will move 1 extra space. Or if you have a disguised hold, you will be able to hold on to your stolen goods for your pirate ships. Even when sunk, you'll still hold on to that cargo because you have a disguised hold. And once you have purchased all 4 of these and they've turned face up, You will then be able to purchase these end game cards, whether they are 10 point or 20 points respectively, and then win the game. But what's important to remember in a 2-player version of this game is the fact that you will have control over 2 factions. So for instance, for this example, I have both the black and the white factions versus my opponent who has the gray and the brown. Now, on top of that change for the 2-player rules, which by the way, you can find them on BoardGameGeek.com, it is official from the designer himself. He has created rules for the game for 2-player. It was initially a 2 to 4-player game. Besides that, you will also be doubling the movement card. So for instance, in this example, you will see that you have the Navy here says 1. It is now 2. So I can move the Navy 2 spaces. The pirate ships, both will move 3. So it's no longer just one faction. Since you control both, you'll move both factions of your pirate ships 3 spaces. And same thing goes for your merchants. Your merchants will move 5 spaces. I will then, at the end of my turn, gain 2 blue cards, and then turn it in, and that ends my turn. What you want to try to keep in mind when playing the game of Black Fleet is the fact that you have these player power cards, and you want to try to gear your strategies around them. If you just play the game as if you use them as a supplemental, as in you have them, but you don't really gear your strategy around it, and you just happen to pick up and deliver to different ports willy-nilly, you'll win the game a few times, but those who focus more on utilizing their powers more effectively and efficiently will find that they win the game that much more often. So it's something that you want to keep track of when you're playing the game, and I highly recommend that you do so if you want to try to win this very interesting pick up and deliver game in general. So if you enjoyed the game or you enjoyed the show, please let me know. You can find me on BoardGameGeek.com under the username Grizzly Archer. You may also find me on Twitter at GrizzlyGames88. Take care and stay a friend in the blend. Bye.
Hey folks, welcome back to Real Talk with Sam. Seems like so long since I've done one of these things, but we are back. Now this week on the Blender, we had kind of a loose theme to work with here. Zee kind of did that on purpose, I think, to kind of spice it up a little bit. One of the things that he said we could talk about, though, and it caught my eye, and that is this thing called metagaming. And metagaming is this thing where you're not supposed to, apparently, in modern gaming society, you are not supposed to carry on what happens from one game to the next, or the next time you play that game, you're not supposed to carry over. That's called metagaming, and it's generally frowned upon, yes. Well, I have got just one thing to say about that, and that is you cannot help but metagame sometimes, because that's who we are. We are responsive people. We are emotional people, and that baggage stays with us. For crying out loud, in this game right here, I will never allow Jason Levine to go to the police station anymore without thinking he's hoarding all of the weapons so that he can win as the traitor. Because he did. And that's always going to be in my mind. That's part of being a human being. It's metagaming, yes. But that's part of what makes us who we are. Zee Garcia is a liar. Why? Because he's very good at it, especially in this game. So every time I'm the sheriff and I'm playing with Zee Garcia, you better believe I'm going to think he's lying about the goods that are in his basket. And I'm going to check it, unless he gives me a very good bribe. That's metagaming. And that's okay. And if you ever beat me at this game as a toaster, you are forever a toaster from that point on. Don't care if you're a human or not. Your butt's going in the brig as soon as I can do it. Unless you prove to me that you're not a toaster in that new game. It's just the way we are. So get over it, folks, and have some fun metagaming. Hey, just trying to keep it real. See you on the flip side.
One of my favorite ways of scoring in a card game is when the cards in the game give you the scoring conditions. They tell you how you're going to score, and so you get to keep the cards that you want to score with and sort of have a plan of what's actually making you points in the game. And so today for Face Off, I wanted to pit two-player games which both do this. Two recent games. I am talking here about Eminent Domain Microcosm versus Tides of Time. Both of these games could be considered micro games. They both have just a few cards in them. They are both only for 2 players. So let's pit them up against each other with a series of course, biased categories based on my own ideas and criteria. And let's see who comes out on top. First up, artwork and components. Eminent Domain Microcosm is made up of 34 cards, and the artwork in it is really pretty good, though the cards are a little bit busy, which makes them a little bit hard to understand. But again, that's what gives you the ability to score based off lots of things found on each card. But this is really good. I like the look of it. I like the way the cards are designed, though they're a little bit busy. Tides of Time has these big tarot-sized cards. They are landscape, as you can see here, and the artwork in this one is stunning. This one is made up of 18 cards, and that's it. You do get a scoring pad in the game. Looks like that. There you go. And you get a pencil, and you get a couple of these tokens, which you'll use in-game, but really that's it. It's basically 18 cards. Gorgeous artwork, though. So, for this category, though it is very close, I'm going to have to give it to Tides of Time just because the cards are so clear and they are so gorgeous. This game will draw someone walking by based on looks and these big, gorgeous cards alone. So far, Tides of Time is winning it. Let's talk mechanisms in-game. Tides of Time is a drafting game where you are going to be taking a card, giving the rest of your hand to your opponent, and then so you take 5 cards, let's say you keep 1, and if you pass 4, from the 4 you've been given, you'll keep 1, you'll pass 3, and so on. Very quick, you're trying to make combinations of things and figuring out which scoring opportunities you want to hold on to. You'll play those cards on the table in front of you. Very quick. Eminent Domain Microcosm is more of it's a game where you will take cards from a common pool in the center of the table, and it has a fair amount of hand management, where on your turn you can play a card from your hand of the ones you've taken from the center, or you can pick up every card you've previously played. So you pick up your entire discard pile, or most of it if you want, because sometimes there is a strategic choice to make by leaving a card in the discard pile. So, as far as how much is going on in the game, how interesting and meaty the game feels, mechanisms-wise, Eminent Domain Microcosm, I think, just edges out Tides of Time. Tides of Time has a lot of tactics. It's quite possibly a more thinky game than Eminent Domain Microcosm, but the way this one plays and what it achieves with the few cards included in the game, I think is a little bit more ingenious. And so for this one, I have to give the nod to Eminent Domain Microcosm. Speaking of strategy and tactics, let's talk about that now. Like I said, in this one, you have the main big idea here is which card you want to take. Of course, that's true for both. But when do you play a card, and when do you take your discard pile back up to give you lots of choices? You are going to take a limited amount of turns. Both players are going to play the exact same number of turns in this one. And so managing your turns more efficiently than your opponent is the key to doing well in this one. And what you take, of course, is very important. In Tides of Time, the main strategic choice is which card you keep from round to round, because you can lock one card down and keep it from round 1 to 2. and then keep 2 cards from round 2 to 3. That's the extent of the game, 3 rounds. And also every round you'll be able to get a card out of circulation. That one is out of drafting for the rest of the game. So that's the idea there. Very interesting choices as well. And both of these, this is a hard category to pick because both of these are really interesting in how they achieve that. Strategy, tactics, they both definitely have lots of that in spades. I'm going to have to go with this one for this category, Tides of Time, because I feel it has a better flow from one round to the next. I think the choices of what you lock, what you discard, give the game, give you more abilities to, and possibilities of messing with your opponent, really, of developing a longer term strategy, even though the game is about the same length as Eminent Domain Microcosm. In this one, what you do affects you a little bit more. In this one, what you do affects both you and your opponent in interesting ways. And so for this category, I gotta give it to Tides of Time. And lastly, we come to Fun Factor. This has been one heated race, as you can tell. I'm a big fan of both of these games. So which one's more fun? For me, there's one more caveat I'm going to have to throw in here, which is how easy is the game to learn, how easy is the game to teach. And that one clearly goes to Tides of Time. This game is much easier to learn. It is easy to play with someone, but the more they play and the more you play, the more you'll realize the depth that's hidden in just 18 cards. This one also has lots of interesting choices to make, but I feel it plateaus a little sooner, and you sort of understand what you should be going for a little quicker, and the game is harder to learn, especially from the included rulebook. If this is one you're picking up, by the way, check online for the updated rules, because they are much better than what's included here, okay? So look for that. So, the face-off has to go to Tides of Time, but really, not by much. Both of these games are excellent, excellent choices for 2 players. If you're looking for an interesting card game that is lightning fast, check both of them out. I'm giving the edge to Tides of Time, but really, they are both winners here. That is our show, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Check us out again in a couple of weeks where we are going to be talking imports, games that are imported into the U.S. We are looking at this from the U.S., of course. And there will be games from Japan. There will be games from Europe. There will be games from South America, from Colombia, for example. There's one game I'll be talking about from Colombia. There are games from all over the world, and we're going to be showing off some of them to you, all right? So join us for that, 2 weeks. And again, check us out. Blender's Best of the Month, once a month. Short little video telling you what's hot, what's new, what is awesome. And again, enter that contest, zeedicetower@gmail.com. Tell me what your favorite segment has been on the Dice Tower, something you saw today, something you've seen in previous episodes. What's your favorite? Tell me that. I'm going to enter you in that contest. And at the end of the month, I'm going to pick a random winner, walk away with some money. All right? So, as always, again, thank you to my contributors. Thank you again to you folks. And, hey, stay a friend of the blend. I'll see you.